Hello everyone, it's Tracy here from Temperance Tarot, and it is time for my monthly deck review. I did not use very many decks this month. I'm not quite sure what was going on with me in August, and I just was not very called to draw cards very often, and I ended up not using any Oracle decks at all. If it hadn't been for a couple of Instagram challenges that I was working through, I might not have pulled cards at all. But I feel like I've come kind of out of that slump and I'm ready to use some cards in September. And you'll probably see a lot of Oracle decks in September because I've got some new ones that I want to give a go. But this is about the decks I used in August. And we will start with the beautiful Rebellion Tarot, which I have done a walkthrough of this deck on my channel already. And it was a very nice reading deck. It's very lovely. Sometimes you have a little bit of trouble seeing the titles. You know, I'm not one of those people who has to have borderless decks, because I think if this deck had had maybe a border at the bottom that allowed you to see the name of the card, that would have been helpful, and so that it all fit on one row and could be in a consistent place. But that's just nitpicky stuff, because this really is a very lovely deck. It's female heavy, it's very romantic, but it's a very nice deck and it read pretty well. I understood the messages it was trying to give me, and it was lovely, laid out in a spread, all in a row together. It was very nice. So I'm going to keep this one. This one's going to stay in my collection. I don't have anything else quite like it, so unless I can get an old out-of-print Tower of Delphi, this will do. This will do just nicely. So the beautiful Rebellion Tarot I am going to keep. I also used the Mystical Tarot this month. This is a Los Scarabeo deck that has this lovely woman on the front who's nowhere in the deck. I had put this in my to-go pile without really even giving it a shot. So I gave it a shot this month, and I kind of like it. It's very interesting. It is a little quirky and a little weird at times. This Two of Swords came up as one of my draws, and her arms are ghastly way out of proportion. She must have arms that hang down below her knees. The Fool's adorable because the Fool is actually slipping on a banana peel. We have a goat coming out of the clouds here in the Ace of Pentacles. The Nine of Cups looks a little less satisfied than you normally see, and I kind of like that. Here we have the Five of Cups, and it looks like he's wearing some sort of weird costume. I'm not quite sure. The Devil's fabulous. It harkens back to some of those old Marseille devils. And look at that hat. That just makes you, it's very traditional, but at the same time, there's these just little things in here that kind of make you giggle every now and then. And the book, the little white book, while it is one of Los Scarabeo's little white books, it doesn't just spit out the traditional meanings. It gives you something a little bit different to think about. And I rather like it. So for right now, I believe this one is going to stay in my collection as well. Here's the Fool, and you have to look very closely to see that the Fool's actually slipping on a banana peel. Very quirky little deck that throws you surprises kind of where you don't expect them. So I think I'm going to keep this one for a little while. I also used the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight. This one's even quirkier than the Mystical Tarot. It has very non-traditional meanings for some of these, or at least I see them as non-traditional, because the little white book's actually pretty good on this one too. But some of the cards are fairly traditional, like Temperance. And then here you have the Two of Wands, which is usually about, you know, planning and looking into the future and possibilities. And all of these signs are leading her to Death Valley, which is a place in the Southwest. It is also the name of the football stadium for the Clemson Tigers here in South Carolina. So seeing a card with Death Valley on it in my part of the world means, oh, we're going to go to a Tigers game. And here's the Eight of Wands. She's being held up by a tree, or her legs might kind of be a tree. And the Eight of Wands is usually about movement and swiftness, and this looks much more stationary than that. It can convey growth and the being buoyed up by growth, the growth that you've achieved, but I don't really see swiftness in that card. So it's just a bit of a different deck, and I try to read it, try not to lean on my traditional knowledge and really look at these images and try and figure out what they're actually saying to me on any given day. Oh, and I loved this Justice card because I pulled it on a day where it asked me where I needed to reignite a passion or something like that. And that Justice card, in the little book, it talks about harmony, but you see there's clearly a treble clef and some notes here. And I had just been thinking about how I had sort of lost my love of music, because I've always loved music, and that I needed to re-embrace music in my life. So that's clearly what that card said to me that day. So Tarot of the Sweet Twilight is definitely a keeper. And I edged it in black, because you really have to. I mean, when you get a deck that has black borders on the front and black borders on the back, it needs to be edged in black. I have been using the TV series Tarot this month. I have a love-hate relationship with this deck. It's very Rider-Waite-Smith. It's very easy to read. But at the same time, you spend half of your time looking at the card trying to figure out what television show it's from. Because this one, this Knight of Wands, I have no clue. This is Orange is the New Black. This is The Big Bang Theory. This is Bones. This, not 100% certain. It could be any one of several supernatural type television programs. This one, any one of several medical programs. This one's obviously Star Trek. But one thing I did find, and there's Glee. One thing I did find is that when I did a single draw for the Instagram challenge, I was obsessed with trying to find out which television show it was from. When I did a spread where I put several cards together and just read the message, it actually reads very well. So I'm going to hang on to it for a little while. Now, I know Simon has put out a video. He had a live chat where everybody talked about this deck and what the different TV shows were. And I need to go back and watch that and with the deck in order so that I can see if I can fill in some of the blanks that I don't know. Because I know maybe a third of them. And I thought I would know so much more because, you know, I'm a television junkie. I mean, that's Lost. I think that one's 6 Feet Under. Medium, I believe I've been told that one is. And The Mentalist. That's probably Fargo, but I'm not sure. That's MacGyver. That's Murder, She Wrote. That could be any one of half a dozen TV shows about a hospital. That's Castle. That's probably Band of Brothers. Pillars of the Earth. The only thing I can think of for the Eight of Wands is the Flash. You know, him running real fast. But I don't know. I'm not sure. No clue. So anyway, I'm going to go back and watch that video eventually and study it in some detail and see if we can figure out all of them. Not that it matters, because I came across one that was I posted it on Instagram and I had no idea which television show it was from, and somebody said, oh, it's Warehouse 13. And so I went and Googled Warehouse 13 and I was like, oh yeah, obviously that's Warehouse 13, a television program I had never actually heard of before. So that one's going to stay in the collection too. This one's going. This is an absolutely gorgeous deck. The artwork is beautiful. the little white book is even actually pretty good because it does tell you what flower is in each of the cards and a very short meaning of that flower. But it doesn't really work with the tarot system as far as I can tell, and I got absolutely nothing intuitively from these cards because it is just a picture of a nymph, fairy type creature and a flower on every single card. So I was always just basing it on, this is the Six of Wands, what does the Six of Wands mean to me, rather than using the images. And if I'm not using the images, there's really no point in me using that deck. So this deck, while it is, I love the artwork. I think they're beautiful little fairies and flowers and just lovely, lovely images. Yeah, this deck is not going to stay in my collection. It is going in the to-go pile. Maybe somebody else can work with it, somebody who knows more about flowers. I ordered the New Era Elements Tarot directly from US Games. They were having a sale, 20% off sale. Unfortunately, this one is going in the to-trade pile as well. And it's not because it's not a beautiful deck, because it is, and the artwork is well executed. I don't really jive with the keywords, but there are just a few cards that are a little bit too confrontational or harsh for the way I work with tarot cards. Like this Five of Fire, Five of Wands. It's a war type conflict. I don't always see the Five of Wands as, well, sometimes I don't even see it as conflict. Sometimes I see it as people working together towards a common cause and kind of butting heads as they're doing so. I think there was a meme or something going around Facebook where it was a bunch of people trying to put up a tent, that sort of thing. Sometimes it can be a healthy competition. I've seen cards depict athletes on the Five of Wands, and so sometimes I see it that way, and sometimes it is this type of conflict, but the warlike conflict to me is a little too harsh for the Five of Wands. The court cards are fabulous in this deck. I'm seriously considering keeping it just for the court cards because they are beautiful. And the Seven of Air, the Seven of Swords, I don't see that as failure. I really like my cards to be a little bit more neutral and not so either extremely positive or extremely negative, because the question at the time and the other cards around it are going to give me that layer of meaning. If I was doing a spread and I saw failure and victory in the same spread, I would be so confused. Even with positional meanings, I would have a hard time with that. So this deck, I mean, isn't she beautiful? This deck is not going to stay with me. I do like the Sun card. The Tower card, this is probably why I won't be jumping on the Urban Tarot when it comes out. That's, you know, that's just a little too upsetting, I guess is the better word. You can't see any positive in that. I can't see any positive in that. And I always have to, in every card, I need to be able to see the positive as well as the negative. So in a negative card, I need to be able to see just a glimmer of positive or hope or what will happen if we move on. And in the positive cards, on the same token, I need to be able to see a little bit of the negative of that, taking it to the extreme or not applying it appropriately. So there you go. That's why I can't use this deck. Torment, I mean, that is, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't deal with that image. I can't deal with that message. This one's very hard for me as well. This is the one that actually got me to buy the deck because I love that one. And this one. I couldn't do that. Absolutely not. So this deck might work really well for, oh, and this one, the Devil. This might work very well for some other people. I truly believe that it can. I just don't think it fits with me. This one's going in the to-go pile. Yes, I do have a copy of the new version of the Gill Tarot. I was one of those people who pre-ordered it from US Games and got the letter and the refund, and then got a deck once they had a few in stock. I will probably be getting a second copy of this deck once it comes out again, where I can just go to my witchy shop and buy it. I was actually kind of surprised at how much I love this deck. I'm thinking that I'm going to get an extra copy because I want to do a borderectomy on one copy, but still have another copy where I haven't messed with it, because the copyright is a little bit more obnoxious than usual. And it does have white borders on the front and the back. I think opening up, there's some cards where you need the border to kind of contain the image. I don't think this is one of those decks, but once I could get a backup copy and know that for sure, I'm not going to cut it up until then. There's just something very special about this deck that I cannot quite articulate. The numbered cards, the pip cards they have keywords on them, but the keywords aren't strictly the Thoth keywords, even though it tends to follow a Thoth system and has a Tree of Life for the Golden Dawn's Tree of Life on the back of it. I can work with the keywords very easily. This is the 7 of Coins. Delay. Well, what does that delay do to? Is it that delay because you are pausing to have a look at how far you've gone and what you've accomplished so far and where you need to go next, to take some intentional time to see what needs to be done next? Or is this delay coming from someplace else? Is it a delay that you're happy about, or is it a delay that's just making you irritated? So it can go either way. The major arcana, I don't know what it is about this artwork. It speaks to me. I love it. And I do really like the keywords on the court cards, because that's one place where keywords actually help me. I still, like a lot of us do, I wouldn't consider myself a beginner, but I would not at all consider myself a proficient tarot reader. So sometimes with the court cards in particular, I need a little bit of help. And this is just, these keywords are just lovely and perfect. Look at that death card. And they're not straight pips, because even though you've got this big number and you've got a keyword, you've also got, here's a person actually doing the work that develops the skill. So you have a little bit more. And I did purchase the big book that comes with it. It's very Kabbalistic and all about the Tree of Life. I found that I don't use it. When I need to pull a book, the little white book that comes with it is perfectly adequate. It actually is fabulous. It doesn't get too deep into the Kabbalah of it, and just talks about the basic meaning of the cards. So I think the little white book is plenty. This deck's not only a keeper, but I'm thinking about having Christine make me a box for this one as well, because it does come in a really inadequate tuck box. You know, sometimes tuck boxes have that extra little bend to help you get it out and a little thumb thing here. This tuck box, I think, will actually taking the cards in and out will not be good for the cards. It will damage the cards. So when I have put aside a little bit more money, I think, Christine, I'm going to get you to make me a box for this one too, with just the tuck box image on the outside. I love it. So, yep, definite keeper. And the last deck that I used this month was the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot. This one is very powerful, and it surprised me a lot. It's a kind of one of those more expensive decks. I think it runs about $35 as opposed to, you know, $20 to $25. So I waited until I could find a deal on eBay where I paid $15 for it. It was a used deck, which it was not used. Nobody had ever touched it. So I didn't, you know, it was one of those that I wanted to try. I was very interested to try, but I wasn't sure I wanted to spend quite that much money for it. But I'm kind of glad I have it now. It is very different, but at the same time, it's not very different. So let's have a look at the book first, because this is a giant book. And I didn't read it cover to cover, but I did read all of the text that was not just a card definition. And then I read the card definitions of any of the cards that I pulled. He starts off, he, she, Louis Martinet and Sally Ann Glassman. They talk about a definition of voodoo and what voodoo is. It's a very high level because I don't know anything at all about voodoo other than what I've read in this book. So I still don't know anything at all about voodoo. The thing I found most interesting about voodoo was how, as it moved through different regions of the world, it just adopted certain religious aspects of whatever religion it ran into and kind of sucked them in and used them as its own. And I found that very freeing and liberating in a way, because there's a lot of Roman Catholicism in voodoo, but there's also a lot of other kinds of religions in voodoo. And I just thought that was just very interesting. It talks about the Loa, and that this is a deck specifically for the voodoo practice in New Orleans, except for the Suit of Pentacles, because for some reason they decided to associate the Suit of Pentacles with, I think it's a Haitian type of voodoo called Santeria. I'll have to find it, hang on. Yes, they associated the Earth suit with Santeria, which is not the voodoo that's practiced in New Orleans. But then the thing that then perplexed me is we move on to Kabbalah. A lot of Kabbalah. They do talk about possession. They talk about possession and what that means as well, which was also interesting. Doesn't mean I'm going to start practicing voodoo. But then we go into the Tree of Life in detail, the Kabbalic Tree of Life, and how it all associates with all of these cards. So I'm thinking, what? And he never satisfactorily explained to me the connection between the Kabbalah and the voodoo. So, but every one of them, the major arcana cards do align. They all have different names, but they do align pretty closely with the traditional Golden Dawn definitions of the major arcana cards. The minors go completely off the rails and are completely different, but are still associated with the Kabbalah. And there is one wild card. So it just sometimes it was great and it made perfect sense and it was so powerful, and sometimes I was just kind of sitting there scratching my head. Let's have a look at the cards. The cards are beautiful. This is the name of the card, which I can't even begin to pronounce all these things. This is the suit. So this is the suit of Earth and the number. And yeah, if the images in the books, just to get a little nitpicky, don't have that same thing on there. So it does make it a little bit difficult to match up this with this in the book. And the book is organized by numbers, not by suits. So you come across all of the 4s, the 3s, the 5s. See, the 4 5s, Gabura. Kabbalah there. And I know just enough about Kabbalah to know just the names of things, and that's about it. These are the court cards because they don't have a number on them. So you really have to go look them up. This actually is the Queen of Fire. This is the Queen of Earth. This one, I'm not sure. I'd have to go look him up. But you can see how powerful the images are. And the images do tell the story very well, which is one thing I really liked about this deck. You look at the image and you get a sense for the meaning, and then you'd go look in the book and you'd be like, oh yeah, of course, I see that. Because the image is telling you what the meaning is. But the words are not. Here's the wild card. I pulled a lot of majors when I was working with this deck. The High Priestess is Marie Laveau. That's the Sun card. This is the Fool card. That's the Star card. That's a little scary. Judgment is Ancestors. That's the Lovers card. This is 8. It's called Possession, and you can see in the book it can be 11, and it equates with the Strength card or the Lust card. Dance that sets the stage for the drama of possession. Here the question of who dances is answered with style and detail. Lust manifested as divine drunkenness and ecstasy moves the dancer inward to the brink of individual being. The cup runs over and self is obliterated in the torrent of self. Self with a capital S. Strength, the ability to exert effort towards a given end, is present in the dancer to such a degree that the sacred is drawn within him or her. Actions then flow from the sacred's inexhaustible reservoir for grace. And there's a lot of very poetic text about each of the cards, and then it has a contemplation and it has a divination, and the divination is just a couple of sentences that gives you the more traditional meaning that you're expecting with the card. Dr. John's a magician. So this deck, really powerful, really interesting. I think I'm going to keep it, but I might have to set aside at some point in the future, when I get done with this activity of going through all my decks, set aside some dedicated time to work with this deck and get to know it a little bit better. The images, I think, are fabulous. But there was one other thing that I thought was a little off-putting, was in the court cards. And they give the traditional Golden Dawn description of what a person would look like. So physically, the object of this card is apt to be a young man with yellow or brownish black hair and blue or gray eyes. That just didn't fit to me in this deck. Okay, now for the surprise. I subscribe to the Goddess Provisions box. It's moderately priced. It has lots of fun stuff in it every month. Frequently essential oils and nice smelly things. Usually a crystal, occasionally something to eat, and once every 6 months or so they put a deck in there. And this month, this is the September box, it came with the Animal Allies Oracle cards and Llewellyn's Little Book of Spirit Animals. Now, if you followed me for any time, you know that, well, first of all, I have this deck already. And I actually like this deck a lot. I think this is a great deck, particularly if you don't know a whole lot about animals and you're in North America. Because 90% of the animals are North Americans and North American animals, and the ones that aren't are like elephant animals that everybody knows. So they're not so region specific that nobody knows about them. This is a really, really lovely deck. And in that box, I also got the Llewellyn's Little Book of Spirit Animals. But, you know, animals are just not my thing. I've decided to do a little giveaway for this book, this deck, and as an added treat, one of my handmade crystal intention bracelets. And I just brought out some of the ones that I made for myself to give you an idea of the kind of work that I do with these bracelets. They're all done with crystals and silver colored beads. They're not sterling silver. And I can make them, they're stretchy bracelets, and I can make them any length that you need to have them. So for example, this is carnelian and agate. This one is amethyst and green aventurine, and I think that is some jasper. This one is amazonite. This is one of my favorites. It is Botswana agate. We have labradorite, carnelian again. These are some, I can't remember the name of them now, shame on me. I have them all written down. This is carnelian, red, garnet, excuse me, carnelian, garnet, and tiger's eye. This one's really powerful. So I would like to do as a giveaway to the people who subscribe to my channel this little package with this deck, this book, and one handmade bracelet that we will work on together to pick out the crystals that you want, and maybe even some of the little charms that you want on it. And to enter the contest, all you have to do is put a comment below this video saying I'm in, or I want in, or something along those lines. And you do need to be one of my subscribers, because this is a special gift for the people who put up with me every month and subscribe to me. So I am going to run this for the whole month. I'm not going to try to pull anything before next month's deck wrap-up video. So what I will do is when I sit down for my September deck wrap-up, I will do a short little video first drawing the winner, and that will be on the last Saturday of September, which I believe is September the 29th. So good luck, and thank you so much as always for watching, and have a great day.